All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Cold Country Podcast where we discuss everything WVU sports. I'm your host, Ian McIntyre. Joining me is Tyler Cobb. Tyler, how we doing?
I am wonderful.
I'm actually doing good too, even after the WVU game, which is what we're here to talk about. The loss to BYU. Let me pull the banner up here. So, WVU goes to BYU on a late Friday night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff, which is just not good for WVU in any sense of the matter. And we get beat 38-24. I think any sane person would know that West Virginia really didn't have that good of a chance in this game. And despite the close scoreboard, I think the game was not as close as it says because BYU looked to be in control for 95% of the game. So the thumbnail I have on this episode is glass half full. So I think there are a lot of positives that you can look at that come from this game, and especially our personnel that needed to step up due to injury. But there are some negatives.
A lot of
And
negatives.
yeah, but before we jump into the positives, which are very important to harp on, I do want to jump into the negatives, which mostly come from the defensive side of the ball. And Tyler, I'm handing it off to you. What was the number one thing on defense that you saw that at least could have held BYU back a little bit and wouldn't allow them to play as conservative as they did in the second half? What do you think the defense could have done?
Guarded the deep balls better. We've talked about Michael Coates all season long about him not being targeted very much, and when he is targeted, he's holding down his area of the field, and that did not happen. That did not happen very much this game. He was the lowest PFF graded person with at least 20 snaps on the team with a PFF grade of 34.3. That is about as bad as you can get, and that
Yep.
can be attributed to the couple of deep balls that he gave up, including an 85-yard pass to Chase Roberts, and then he also had a defensive pass interference call in a crucial time, and that lowered his grade as well. So not a good game for Michael Coates, but Jason Chambers, the other cornerback who we've talked a little bit about here previously, didn't have a great game as well. Graded out as 55.9 in PFF, which is a little bit below average. So just overall, not the greatest play from the secondary. Um, Bear Bachmeyer was just able to sling it all day long deep, and that's where their points came from. They didn't. I thought that we held them better than I expected in the ground game. I thought L.J. Martin would have a much better game than he did. I mean, I'm not saying he had a bad game, but 21 carries for 90 yards, 4.3 yards per carry is holding him to what he's been doing. And so you did okay in the run game, and it came down to you just needed to hold up better in the secondary. Sounds a lot like 2024, and it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the game was closer in terms of score than it was on paper. You hit it right on the nail. If you look at the team stats, total yardage, they had 518 total yards to our 291. They had 351 through the air to our 135. So they won it throwing the ball deep. They kept at it, and that's what they succeeded at.
Yeah, I wonder if they knew coming into the game that going deep was probably or should have been a point of focus for them because no team had really tried that on us yet. Utah sort of exposed us to it, but BYU took full advantage of it. And I think for BYU and Bear Bachmeyer, that was one of the top priorities of the game plan. And like you said, the run game wasn't really an issue for us, and even to a certain extent, the tackling was better, which is weird to say considering that a lot of this game fell on the defense's inability to get stops, but the missed tackles were not as prevalent as they have been in the past two games. And it's weird. You fix one problem on paper and you have another one. So it's back to the drawing board in a sense for this defense. And ever since halftime of the Kansas game, man, the defense just hasn't been in it. And we sort of gave him a pass for Kansas. But then Utah was inexcusable. And this, you sort of knew it was going to happen. And you knew the defense was going to struggle to an extent just because of how good Bear Bachmeyer is and how they have to keep our defense honest to the run game and the pass game. But, dude, like, the defense has just not looked poised. They haven't looked sound. And we would not have thought that after the first 3 games of the season.
Here's a stat for you that kind of shows how easily BYU was able to throw the ball deep. Coming into the West Virginia game for BYU, they had only had 2 passes of 30 or more yards through 4 games. In the first half alone, they had doubled that. They had 4 passes of 30-plus yards in the first half against West Virginia. So that kind of shows they made it look easy, their ability to throw the ball deep. And I want to give, I sound like Neil Brown out here giving credit to the other team, but you do have to credit Bear Mockmeyer. For a true freshman, he is incredible. He is showing tremendous poise. He had a couple plays that I'm sure he will want back. The fumble that Fred Perry picked up and the interception to Chase Wilson. I'm sure he'll want those back. But other than that, I thought he played an incredible game. The box score shows it. So you got to give some credit to Bear Bachmeier. And then, of course, Chase Roberts as well, who went off and just was able to pick on that West Virginia secondary all day. But just not an overall great day despite the run defense showing some improvements.
Yeah. I also, though, will give credit to the defense, the turnovers that we forced, especially Fred Perry. And one important turnover we got was in BYU territory. They were backed up against their own
both of
line.
them. Both of them. One was at the 20. One of them was at the 22, and one was at the 3.
Yeah, I was talking about the one at the 3, but that one at the 25 too. Yeah, I forgot that was so close. But that one was super important at their own 3, where we could just get the ball and get a touchdown first play. That was super important for us to get back in the game. And just imagine if that had happened before the drives previous, where we were within 1 score if we get that touchdown. And I think the game could have looked totally different if we would have gotten that turnover earlier. So, like I said, the defense fixes one problem, they cause another. And there are positives to take away from the defense. And again, I'll keep harping on it. Zach Alley is legit. If he gets the correct personnel with his correct system, this defense will improve. Again, we're seeing holes in conference play right now, and especially the secondary in Big 12 play has not looked good. But there's a lot to build on here. So I think while we have a lot of problems on defense, they showed some positives, and hopefully we can use that to somehow find another win in our conference schedule, which I do think is possible despite what a lot of people say. And it's possible to try to find another win. And that also sort of segues us into the offense. And I want to start with Khalil Wilkins. Tyler, how do you think Khalil did in his first start for WVU?
This is tough. I've seen pretty much the consensus is that we should give Khalil the keys and let him run with it moving forward. But I'm not as sold as many others are. I said after the game that I think that Khalil Wilkins looked as good as he did simply because the rest of the team, especially the offense, was just that bad. But if you look at the box score, 7 for 15, 81 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Now, to his defense, one of those interceptions was not on him. It was a beautifully placed ball to Cam Vaughn, and Cam Vaughn bobbles it, and it gets intercepted. And so one of those interceptions you have to consider. But I don't want to say he played bad, especially because he is a freshman, redshirt freshman, going into that environment. It's going to be tough. And so I thought he was poised enough to, put us in a position to make some plays when we were able to make them. But at the same time, I was not overly impressed as to what the majority of the fan base is making it seem.
Yeah, I think I'm more on your side than I am on everyone else's side. Khalil still has a lot to get better at, but also he has a lot of time to develop. So if you look at it from that lens, I think what we saw in a very hostile environment at BYU was definitely not the worst thing to happen. early in the game, he threw that pick on that curl route, and I immediately texted our group, why was that a play call? Why were the curl routes implemented? Like, he should have known based on the coverage that wasn't a good idea. But then again, like you said, he's a freshman. He has to be out on the field to work those mistakes out. But that interception was totally on him. And hold on, I'll let you say what you wanted to say before.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. Keep going.
Okay. You also look at the box score. You were talking a little bit about the box score. 23 rushes for Khalil Wilkins.
Taking a lot of hits.
Yeah, 89 yards and a touchdown. That is so many hits to be taken in one game. And if you're an avid fan of college football in general, which I'm guessing if you're watching this, you are, you cannot be taking 23 carries a game as a quarterback. I think if I go back and look at the box score right here, he had more carries than Dior Hubbard.
He did. He had the most carries on everybody on the team.
That's not a formula for success. I mean, it might have done you some good in this game, but you cannot do that all season and expect Khalil to be 100% going in game by game. You can't expect him to carry the ball 23 yards a game. And I know Rich Rod's all about, trying to find a spark, especially at the quarterback position. And it seemed like with that touchdown, Khalil was able to provide us something when we didn't have a clear passing game. But, dude, you can't allow your quarterback to be taking hits like that. And I know a lot of people have also said, well, Pat White was an avid runner, right? Well, Pat White was so skilled that he could get yards without getting hit. That was sort of his prerogative. He would run out of bounds and dodge tacklers at all costs unless he knew he was going to go in and get a touchdown. But Khalil has no choice, man. With this offensive line, he has to take a hit. If he wants even 2 or 3 yards, he's got to get body slammed in the ribs, Steve, and get 2 or 3 yards.
Well, he even had to go off the field in the first or second quarter because of an official timeout. So he took a lot. He's got to watch it.
That's when Scotty Fox came in, right? And that was also funny. I texted our chat, official timeout for injury to an official.
Yeah.
What?
Man. I wanted to go back on that first interception. Well, really both interceptions. They were complete opposite. The second one, I gave him the benefit of the doubt because at the end of the day, it was a beautiful pass to Cam Vaughn. Cam Vaughn should have caught it. And that should have ended up resulting in 7 points because we were right there inside the 5. The first one was the complete opposite. It was you just put a freshman quarterback on the road and he made up his mind where the ball was going before the ball was snapped, and it just was intercepted and did not end well. And so, yeah, Khalil, while he did show some promise, and I would not be mad or question the decision to start him again against UCF, he also had some bad things. Like you said, he's got a lot of time to work it out. He's just a redshirt freshman. But at the same time, as if I'm not necessarily sold on Scotty or Khalil, one or the other. You mentioned Dior Hubbard. Go ahead and read off your Dior Hubbard stat, because this is one of the most mind-boggling stats I have ever heard in college football, and definitely this year so far.
Yeah, it was a crazy one. So, again, shout out Coos, right? Because I was watching Coos' show earlier today. We're recording on Monday after the game, and I was watching Coos' show earlier in the day, and he mentioned Dior Hubbard's stat line. So, Hubbard's stat line in the box score, 17 carries for 32 yards. So,
which is atrocious, by the way.
Yeah.
But when you consider the next one, makes it a little less.
I was going to say, definitely does not jump out at you initially as a solid stat line. He did have a touchdown, though, which was a result of that turnover. But I was going to say 32 yards on the ground, but 51 yards after contact. 51 yards after contact. So you can imagine the work that he had to put in to even get those yards. They were hitting him behind the line of scrimmage on multiple occasions, whether it be bad play calls or just the offensive line not doing their job.
I wouldn't even say on multiple occasions. I would say majority of the time he was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
To have 20 more yards after contact than you do in total yards on the game is crazy.
I can't even explain it. And it's just one of those stats that is so hard to justify There's
Yeah.
no way you can
Well,
justify it.
here's how I justify it. Clay Ash, I owe you an apology. Ty Edwards, I don't know how you managed to get 150 against Pitt, because this offensive line just continues to show why it is probably the worst offensive line in the Power Four. 51 yards after contact, but 32 yards on the day is crazy.
Yeah. And speaking of that offensive line, dude, that I forget when exactly it was in the game. I know it was later in the game, but we had that 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 goal line stand, and we just could not get it in there.
No.
The center literally placed the ball on the plane. Like, that's how close we were to getting it in. The tip of the ball was crossing the plane on the snap, and we could not get it in the end zone. It was so bad and a horrible way to end the game. It was just not fun to watch.
Well, I wasn't a fan of the play call there, because you're basically on the goal line. I mean, you are, 2 inches, 3 inches from the goal line, and you have ran the tush push, your version of the tush push before, but you decide to go the fat package, which I believe is a shotgun package, and instead of having your quarterback under center, I would have had the tush push that you have ran before in that situation. I don't know why we went from, you know, 2 inches from the goal line and decided to go shotgun instead of under center. So I wasn't a huge fan of the play call there, but it was just painful to watch when you're that close and can't punch it in.
Yeah, it's annoying. And speaking of the play calling, a lot of people are still calling for the head of Rich Rodriguez. And I'm still going to come out and say it's irrational to be talking about that right now. And I understand the fan base's frustration, because trust me, in our group chat on Friday night, we were all crashing out over this game. And we knew we were going to, too, which is the funny thing, but we were all crashing out. So I understand where you guys are coming from. But in the modern landscape of college football, you can't fire a dude after 1 year. Which, speaking of which, look at James Franklin, right? He just lost to UCLA, and probably 0-4 UCLA. It's probably going to be the biggest upset of the year.
I don't know. Probably. I mean, if there's a bigger upset than that, we've got 2007 part 2 on our hands. I mean,
I agree with you, but also it's college football.
that's true. But I don't know. I just don't see a bigger upset happening.
No.
I'll tell you what,
I
the upset that might happen is Ohio State over Michigan, because can Ohio State be favored at this point after losing 5 straight?
I wonder if they're actually going to go into that game and be Ohio State be underdogs, even if they're undefeated up to that point. I wonder. But yeah, I mean, a lot of fans are frustrated and upset at James Franklin, but they also realize the best way that they build for the future right now is to keep James Franklin. So I don't think that calling for the head of Rich Rod right now is logical after 6 games when you know your team is bad. You look at all the statistics that the internet could ever give you, and you know that the team is not doing good right now. And again, I'll keep saying this as well. It's not like I don't think we can turn it around, because we have to have confidence in these athletes that they know what they're doing, and they're here for a reason. But they're just not performing well right now. And any stat will tell you that. And while I do not agree with some of Rich Rod's play calling decisions, let's say, I don't think this is the right time to be having the conversation about him leaving WVU as of yet.
Especially when it is very apparent that he just does not have the personnel to compete right now. And and he pretty much said that himself in the post game presser. I paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of, we've got to get some help. And now I'm sure that means from both people on the roster currently, and then obviously looking forward to guys you're getting out of high school and the portal next season. But he just does not have the personnel to win big right now or compete for a Big 12 championship. Like you said, there are a couple plays here and there that are raising question marks. But at the same time, if you don't have the personnel to run the more complicated plays, you kind of have to stay simple if that's what your guys can run.
Yeah.
Which is actually something I wanted to bring up on defense. Zach Alley is known for running a very complicated defensive scheme. He likes to switch things up. He's very multiple, and he runs a lot of different blitz packages. And I can't remember which West Virginia sports writer it was, but somebody mentioned that maybe he's trying to do a little bit too much. You mentioned that one game it seems like we're very good at something and really bad at something, and then the next game it kind of flip flops. That could be in response to Zach Elliott's trying to do too many things at once or be a little bit too complicated in terms of his scheme. Now, again, that could come down to the guys he has just aren't able to keep up or run the scheme he wants to run. So it's a mixed bag. You kind of got to watch both ways. Does he have the personnel? Is he calling too complicated? So on and so forth. Overall, I at the end of the day, I will look at it as a glass half full. You could have lost worse. You put up 24 points, and you put up 10 points. You won the second half. I said that before we started recording. You won the second half of the game. One of the scores came in garbage time. Who cares? We know we're going to be pretty bad anyway. You got to look at the positives. We won the second half. We scored some points. That's more than we've been able to do.
Yeah, and you also got to look at the fact that the school next year, WVU, will have more funding to allocate towards the football team to try to go out and get better players in the portal anyway, because we know there are probably going to be a significant amount of guys graduating and or leaving the school for the portal. So having that extra funding is going to be a really, really big help. So that alone will improve the team in some way, whether it be facilities, training staff, coaching, or personnel players. It's going to do a lot of good for our football team to now be in that top echelon of Big 12 team spending. So you look at it from that perspective, the future looks bright, and the quarterback position looks bright in good hands in the future under Khalil and Scotty Fox right now. Again, like you said, they got a lot of work to do. They really got a lot of work to do, especially for the rest of this season, to be able to play up to the expectations of a solid starter. But I believe from what we saw in BYU, they can really do that. And hopefully we can keep some of the guys that we know are dogs on the roster right now. We can keep them and develop them for next year as well, because they're going to have another year to learn this system and refine their game around this system. So things can only get better with time as far as this season goes, because right now there ain't anything to look forward to.
It can't get any worse, right?
It really can't get any worse. I mean, unless the NCAA disqualifies us for being WVU, because God knows that could happen. We're WVU.
What are they going to disqualify us from? Losing?
Yes. We're going to get 12-0 and make the playoff. That's what they're going to do.
They're going to force us into the Big 12 championship as punishment.
We've never been to one since we joined the Big 12. We've never been to a Big 12 championship.
Indeed. It has been, 12 years, I believe? 2012 was when we joined.
Yep, since 2012.
So,
that reminds me of the good old Geno Tavon Austin days. That Baylor game where Geno threw for 650 yards. One of the craziest stat lines of a quarterback.
And the Big 12 has really changed in terms of style of play. The different conferences used to have like specific game style identities. I mean, the Big 12 was known for having absolutely no defense and some of the best offenses in the country, and now it's just kind of pretty well rounded. I would say there's some good offenses and some good defenses.
Yeah, that's a fair take. Well, do you have anything else on BYU?
I don't. BYU is a solid team. West Virginia's not, and they kind of showed it. We got lucky here and there from Fred Perry being a dog, and here we are.
Fair enough. BYU's legit, man. BYU could be a contender for the Big 12 title, and maybe give Tech a run for their money. Give Texas Tech a run for their money. So BYU's no slouch.
Nope. Don't sleep on the Cougs.
Yep. Don't sleep on the BYU Cougars. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was a short video, and that's going to do it for our recap on the BYU versus WVU game. Before we go, make sure to like this video. It does a lot for the algorithm and for us. It gets our video out to more people. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Follow the Instagram and X. We are now at 500 followers on X, so thank you guys so much for giving us the platform on there. And don't forget about our Spotify. This episode will be out on there as well. So that's going to do it from us. So for me and from Tyler, we'll see you on the next episode. We will have more content during the bye week. So
Indeed.
more to come. See you guys later.
Goodbye, America.